Zandile Makhoba is an economist at Liberty, a division of Standard Bank. She joins us to give us a further reaction. Thank you so much for your time. Good news, but what does it mean for the ordinary South African consumer? We know that members of the Monetary Policy Committee were not necessarily unanimous. So one of the members would have wanted a 50 basis point cut, but it was not to be.
And we would all have agreed with him if we were having the chance to vote. But yeah, the MPC, in a period of cautiousness, given that there is a lot of uncertainty happening globally, but definitely the internal measures of the country pointing to a rate cut, we are seeing that GDP is not going to grow as well as we would have hoped. So the ideas of overheating are lost there. And our April CPI inflation, notably lower than what we've seen in the average for the last quarter, which is Q1 2025. So we have had a continued downward trajectory in our inflation rate, calling for a little bit of help for the economy. However, the MPC is looking and seeing that that might start to increase in the third quarter, and a little bit cautious just in terms of moving that repo rate down too far.
Obviously not surprising that the Reserve Bank would be cautious, but there is a glimmer of hope in terms of the outlook for further monetary policy easing. Talk to us about what you made in terms of the sentiment that was shared by the Reserve Bank governor, but at the same time what the market is expecting going forward.
Well, globally, lots of uncertainty. He did spend a little bit of time just kind of highlighting the global outlook in terms of GDP being slower, an indication that, it might have a negative impact on our own economy. So definitely a warning there. One of the things that is mentioned just in terms of the supporting documents is that there is consideration for the target range to be moved a little bit down. So our midpoint at the moment is around 4.5%, and there's strong consideration around moving that to 3%. So where we are, we'd actually be in a position where there isn't much movement, given that April's number was around 2.3, and the average expected for 2025 is around that 3.2% mark. So, it's still a bit of time. The Monetary Policy Committee is considering the impact of a lower inflation rate, inflation target. But if it should move to these numbers, we would not see further cuts. So some caution. There is easing inflationary pressure in some pockets. He mentioned fuel prices as one big example that impacts us at household level. But yeah, it is a time when policy is being considered, and that will influence what happens next.
I'm glad that you touched on that policy matter where inflation targeting is concerned. Is it a policy or a direction that South Africa should take, a metric that South Africa should be using, given that it has now spilled into the world of politics where it is sort of being used as a political tool as opposed to the independence of the South African Reserve Bank, ensuring that it stays with its mandate and it does not toe outside of those lines?
Yeah, so quite key in that there are two factors highlighted just in terms of conversations and questions during this session. One is that we often talk a lot about the consumer's position and those who are indebted when we talk about the interest rate, but seldom consider the other side of the saver and the person who tends to not have accumulated debt but is a net saver. So a big change now in terms of trying to really protect those who are savers in the economy, and hopefully that boosts a little bit in terms of investments and bonds and so on. The other element is trying to align ourselves with global best practice, if I can call it that.
Yeah.
Our trade partners tend to have a lower inflation rate. It helps them in terms of managing volatility and creating some stability in their currencies as well. And I think the idea is for us to be better aligned to that so that we can see the same monetary stability on our end. So there are some strong, legitimate economic reasons for the consideration. And of course, it will have to take into account how it will impact households and economic growth as they go forward.
Thank you so much for your contributions. Zandile Makhoba is an economist at Liberty, talking to us in reaction to the announced 25 basis point cut in South Africa's interest rate.